who is anybody to judge and say what's good or bad for society, what it is? But like even in
Yeah.
that, right? Like the numbers going up and down, this view of like the validation of like, do people like it, right? Are people responding to it? Is it getting
Hmm.
enough views on TikTok, as you said before? I would imagine it ties back to what you said for your kids a little bit, why you don't want them on social media. Like there's something that I think we have a general sense of that, like you should feel good enough as yourself. You shouldn't need external validation. You shouldn't need
Hmm.
people to be like you're great or you're popular or you're,
Yeah.
whatever, your eyes are the right distance apart, any of that shit. Right. That's why we don't want our kids on there, because we don't want them to
Yeah.
feel bad about themselves. I go back to that. Like, how do you think about that? How do you protect yourself against that from not where your identity, your worth isn't rooted in how many views did you get today? What stations are picking you up?
Yeah. I mean, I would say like you can't really. I mean,
Yeah.
you like I no, you don't really protect yourself from it because you fall victim to it. It's like, I hate the fact that, oh, I realize I'm in a better mood because my video got that is just what happens and it sucks. Or, oh man, no one's biting. Oh my gosh, I feel crappy. And a lot of this, and I would say you have to have thick skin to do this because of all the messages that you get and all the hate that you get. Because I don't want to say that you are constantly gaslit, but I'll admit sometimes I'm like, wait, like am I a bad person? Did I say that? And I'm like, no, I was like, of course I didn't mean it like that. I know this. And it just this actually happened to me the other day, which I found very interesting. And again, I felt like I was being gaslit a little bit. I had somebody, a trans person, reach out to me. Um, and they were sexually assaulted. They had this story and they were, something was taken advantage of by this movie company that they were working with, her story and her assault, and they didn't get permission, all these things. And she's going through this lawsuit, and she told me she pitched this to like 15 journalists, and or they pitched this. I don't want to misgender them because whatever, I don't want to disrespect. So they pitched this to 15 journalists. Nobody was biting. They pitched it to freelancers who pitched it to their people. Nobody was biting. So I was like, all right, there's clearly a reason no one's biting, but let me look into this. So at the end of the day, if I felt like they deserve to get their story out there, so I said, look, I will at least have you on my podcast. You can say whatever you want. I will not edit it. You can just put it out there. I'll just do that for you. Right. They were so grateful. And then like an hour later, I get an email and they're like, "Hey Lauren, I just got done looking at your Instagram and your TikTok or whatever, and I just realized we are diametrically opposed on the political spectrum.
Mm.
And I just don't think it's wise that we collaborate." So I go back and I look at my stuff, and it's really not. I had like one thing on Instagram that I thought Sam Smith looked like shit, because he does look like shit. He's fat now, and he dresses like a fucking pig wrapped in like wire. What the fuck? You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm not sorry about that. Like he's a great talent, but he looks like shit. So I saw that. I'm like, that's like the only semi-political thing I posted. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding? Are you mental? Basically, the one person that was giving you a shot right now. You don't see the irony in this? The one person that was going to share your story, you actually, okay, that's fine. And also, it's kind of like these people don't want to be judged for being trans or being whatever, but you were sitting here, quote unquote, judging a book by its cover. You were
Mm.
doing the exact opposite. And it's like, this is why we're never going to get anywhere as a
Mm.
country, as a society, because of this.
Mm.
I was completely willing. I don't give a shit if you're trans, okay? I will call you whatever you want. Do I want my kids being introduced to the fact that you can hack off your tits at, whatever age you want? No, I don't want that for them. If they're 18 and they decide it, sure, whatever, go ahead. I'm not going to wish that on them. But again, it's like, who do you think you are you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it makes me very
Yeah.
sad for this country and the fact that we just have to judge everybody
So let me
constantly.
hit two pieces to
Yeah.
that, and the first one, I totally get it, but this
Mhm.
is this is what I grapple with a lot, right? Philosophically thinking about it, of like, how do we know? How can we trust ourselves to know, right? And I'm not saying it's the case in this instance, but the
Mhm.
gaslighting, right? The bullying, you spoke about it, like, how do you know? Maybe sometimes it's not warranted. How do you like? And I mean that quite literally. Like, how do you know? Like, what is your gauge? How do you trust yourself to say, I looked at my Instagram feed, I looked at what I said, I see what this person's saying, and they're accusing me of doing
Yeah.
something bad, but I know I didn't do it, because that's a big bet in some ways replacing, right? Some of the, I'm not saying this is you, but some of the greatest human suffering that I think's occurred in the history of the world
Mhm.
is because people place the bet to say, I'm fine. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm going to keep pushing ahead, right? I often bring up as a very extreme on this show, like a Hitler. Hitler thought like everything's good. I'm doing the
Mhm.
exact right thing for the
He
world,
thought he right.
right? So like, how do you
Mhm.
check yourself? How do you make sure that when you say, no, 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 that person's gaslighting me, I didn't do anything wrong? How do you know you didn't
Yeah.
do anything wrong?
No, that's a great question, and, I can give you an example of this. I on the podcast with, about the girl claiming to be Madeline, I said and I said this and I put it as a teaser. So I was ready for the world to hear me say it. I did not care. I just said, look, if this girl is Madeline McCann, right? Let's say she is. I said a million times she's not, but let's say she is. I am very sad for Kate and Jerry McCann, as of course they would not dream of their daughter being a sex worker. Okay. That I'm sorry. Do you dream of your kids being a sex worker? No. Are you saying that it's a bad industry and it's negative? Well, I'm not saying it directly, but sure, I'm saying it's not ideal for me. This is my podcast. I can say my opinion and I can say what I want. Well, of course, all these girls come out of the woodwork saying there's a special place in hell for you, not supporting other women, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I hear you. Not like quote unquote supporting other women. I did say that it was sad. It would be sad for the McCanns if she was a sex worker. And then I also wrote in a disclaimer this, and I literally, you can go to my Instagram because I made it very clear. I'm not into bullying. I don't think this girl, Julia, should be bullied, even though what she's doing is so wrong. So I said, just because I'm calling her a sex worker, I'm not inciting violence against her. This is not meant for you all to go and bully her and say you're a whore, you're this, you're that. I actually put that as a disclaimer. So these people that were calling me out, it's like you should hear them. They told me to go, die and crawl in the hole back where I came from. It's just like, guys, do you hear yourself?
Mhm.
I specifically politely said on my podcast, I don't think any parent dreams of their kid being a sex worker. That is it. And listen to you.
Mhm.
So yeah, like, did I write back to some of them and I said, I'm sorry if I offended you. I really am. Because chances are that person's probably a sex worker and I offended them. And I'm very sorry. So yeah, I'll apologize. Like if that hurt someone individually, but as a whole, as a blanket statement, I stand by that statement. But
Yeah.
yeah, I could see where it maybe hurt someone.
It's tricky too, right? Because like there's a weird, and just looking from the outside, not even necessarily your specifics, but you could use that where it's like
Hmm.
there's similarity, like the Sam Smith you think you just said before, and I get it. I hear what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
okay, you say something bad about somebody says something bad about you, and it's like, all
Yeah.
right, like they're now attacking you because they don't like what you said, but they feel like they're
Yeah.
doing that because you attack somebody, and there's like this cycle of it that like goes on and
Exactly.
on. How do you think about that with what you're saying with like the bullying and the hard days you've had where you've like, there's sometimes I want to quit. Some people could be like, well,
Yeah.
there's an irony in that because you're calling out other people, but now when people call you out, it hurts. And I get that, right? Again, I'm not saying it's
Hmm.
simple. I'm not judging, but like, does that ever make you wonder and question? Like maybe, I don't know, like maybe there's something
Well,
to
no,
that.